In a quiet little village, nestled among rolling hills, stood a very old, very broken-down house. Under the light of the full moon, it looked extra spooky. Villagers would whisper stories about it, stories of strange noises and floating shadows. They said a ghost lived there, but this wasn't just any ghost. This was a very, very funny ghost. Our story is about a boy named Vladimir who was 9 years old and bursting with curiosity. One sunny afternoon, while playing with his friends, the old house came up. "I want to see the ghost," Vladimir declared bravely. His friends gasped. "No way, Vladimir, it's too scary." One said, "You'll get spooked," another warned. But their words didn't scare Vladimir. In fact, they made him even more determined. He decided that very night he would go and meet this mysterious ghost. He was going to solve the mystery of the funny ghost of the village. As darkness fell, Vladimir began his preparations. He was like a little explorer getting ready for a grand expedition. First, he grabbed his trusty flashlight. Its beam soared against the shadows. Next, he packed some of his favorite snacks, a crunchy apple and some cookies, because even ghost hunters get hungry. He filled his water bottle to the brim. And last but not least, he scooped up his fluffy cat, Minnie. Minnie, however, wasn't as brave as Vladimir. While Vladimir was packing, Minnie started playing with the flashlight, too. The little cat accidentally turned it on, pointing the bright beam right at its own face. Frightened by the sudden light, Minnie yelped and dropped the flashlight with a clatter. Vladimir giggled quietly, picked up his scaredy cat, and whispered, "Minnie, we have to be quiet." With his backpack on and Minnie tucked under his arm, Vladimir tiptoed out of his house, leaving the sleeping village behind. The walk to the old house was quiet, with only the sound of crickets and the rustling of leaves in the night breeze. Soon, the spooky silhouette of the house loomed before them. It looked even bigger and darker up close. Vladimir took a deep breath and pushed the heavy wooden door. It let out a long, slow creak that echoed through the silent night. Eek! Inside, it was pitch black. Vladimir switched on his flashlight, its beam dancing across dusty furniture covered in white sheets. Spooky sounds filled the air. The wind howled through broken window panes, and unseen doors creaked in the darkness. Suddenly, Minnie spotted a long curtain swaying in a draft. With a terrified meow, the cat leaped from Vladimir's arms and darted away, disappearing into the shadows. Vladimir's heart pounded in his chest. For a moment, he wanted to run too, but he remembered his mission. Taking another deep breath, he gripped his flashlight tighter and stepped further into the house. He tiptoed through a long, dark hallway, his flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. As he reached the end of the hall and entered a large, empty room, a shape began to form in the corner. It was white and wispy, and it floated gently in the air. It was the ghost. The ghost drifted towards him, its mouth open, but instead of a scary wail, it made a funny little noise. "Boo!" Vladimir, startled but also a little confused, held up his flashlight and shouted, "Who are you?" The ghost seemed just as surprised as he was. It jumped back in the air and shouted in a shaky voice, "Who are you?" For a second, they both just stared at each other, frozen. Then, a small giggle escaped. Vladimir, the ghosts, heard it and let out a nervous little chuckle of its own. Soon they were both laughing, the spooky tension completely gone. The ghost floated down and introduced itself. Its name was Pookie. "I live here," Pookie said, its voice much friendlier now. "I try my best to be scary, but to be honest, I get scared really easily too." Vladimir laughed out loud. "So you're a scared ghost?" he asked. Pookie looked a little embarrassed and scratched its translucent head. "Well, yeah," it admitted with a sigh. Vladimir found this hilarious. A ghost who was afraid of its own shadow. It wasn't scary at all. It was actually kind of sweet. Vladimir sat down on the dusty floor, and Pookie floated nearby. They started talking, sharing stories and laughing like they were old friends. Pookie, excited to have a visitor, tried to show off its ghostly skills. It spun around the room, trying to float gracefully, but it was clumsy. It kept bumping into the walls and furniture. "Ouch!" Pookie would exclaim after hitting a bookcase. Still learning. Vladimir couldn't stop laughing at the clumsy, lovable ghost. As they talked, Vladimir had an idea. "Pookie," he said, "instead of trying to scare people and failing, why don't you do what you're good at? You should make people laugh instead." Pookie's ghostly eyes lit up. It had never thought of that before. Scaring people was what ghosts were supposed to do, but it just wasn't very good at it. Making people laugh, though, that sounded like fun. "Yes," Pookie exclaimed, floating with excitement. "That's a brilliant idea. I will be a laughing ghost." From that moment on, Pookie's mission changed. It started practicing funny faces in a broken mirror and came up with silly jokes to tell the villagers who dared to peek into the old house. As the first rays of morning light streamed through the dusty windows, Vladimir knew it was time to go home. He said goodbye to his new friend, promising to visit again soon. When he returned to the village, he found everyone buzzing with new stories about the old house. But they weren't scary stories anymore. People were talking about the hilarious ghost who told jokes and made funny faces. The children weren't afraid anymore. They would wave at the old house, hoping to see their funny friend. The villagers now loved Pookie. As Vladimir walked home, he looked back and saw Pookie waving from the roof of the old house. He could almost hear its cheerful voice on the wind. "Keep smiling, because even ghosts can laugh too." Vladimir smiled, knowing that friendship is strong enough to beat any fear. And that sometimes the most unexpected friends can bring the most happiness.